Our government and the government in Washington and many Western leaders, including Rishi Sunak, have made it quite clear that their overwhelming support for Israel in this is conditional, that as and when Israel goes in, they have to follow the rules of war. If, in your judgment, they don't, if by a general consensus Israel goes in too hard and there are too many civilian casualties in Gaza, what will you do? How will you show your disapproval and how will you withdraw your support?
Well, look, you've heard the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, the President of the United States, the US Secretary of State, and many others from around the West make exactly that point over the weekend, that democracies hold themselves to a higher standard. And clearly, Israel needs to meet those obligations and responsibilities. But Israel does, under international law, have the right to defend itself, and it has the right to seek the destruction of Hamas. The extraordinarily difficult reality that Israel faces in prosecuting this mission is it goes against an adversary in Hamas who routinely hide in amongst the civilian population and who use civic buildings as places beneath which to store their munitions. And the longer that Israel leaves it, the more time Hamas has to melt away. And therefore, all of this comes to naught because Hamas remains completely unaffected. Now, that is an impossible thing for Israel to balance. We've seen them give the direction for the population of Gaza to move southwards. That's an incredibly difficult thing for that population to do. But Israel has every right under international law to defend itself and to get after Hamas.
Yeah.
And they need to do that in a timely way.
But as viewers know, almost 3,000 Palestinians have now been killed in the action so far. And that is notwithstanding a possibly imminent invasion. Is it enough to say, well, Hamas uses civilians as human shields, so what on earth can we do? I mean, we're trying to root out Hamas, so people are going to die. That doesn't sound like everything is being done to avoid civilian casualties.
Well, I think everything that practically can be done is being done in that they have given that direction to the population. Israel also has the advantage of incredibly sophisticated intelligence gathering capabilities, which will allow it to prosecute the mission with precision. That is not to say, however, that there are not going to be some incredibly grim scenes on our TV screens over the next few days and weeks.
What do we say to them then, Mr. Heappey? Well, that's unfortunate because that doesn't sound strong enough.
No. I don't think you simply say that's unfortunate. I think that you have to be clear that international law allows Israel to prosecute a mission that is legal, proportionate, and necessary, and that, I'm afraid, does not necessarily mean that Israel has to be able to guarantee that there will be no civilian loss of life.
Well,
it is, Richard, if I may, it is almost inevitable, given the complexity of the mission, that there will be an innocent civilian population that is very badly affected. I just don't think there's any point pretending otherwise.
Well, that was the point.
But the UK, the US, and Israel's friends are supporting them and reminding them that they have an obligation to international law. They are aware of that, and we've seen them over the last few days do everything I think they reasonably can to meet those international legal commitments.
Well, that was the point I sort of interrupted you. I was going to make. It is actually, if we're realistic about this, it's an impossible conundrum, isn't it? It's an impossible circle to square. You can't go after these terrorists who embed themselves in a civilian population and hide behind them and alongside them. You simply can't go in and take them out and not inflict civilian casualties, can you? It's impossible.
No, and the longer you leave it, the more time that Hamas has to move all of their rockets and other munitions away from where the Israeli intelligence agencies currently know them to be and to other places in the Strip, probably hidden beneath all of these poor people who are trying to evacuate south. Hamas are a despicable organization. I think sometimes that gets lost in the noise of all of the debate that we've seen over the last 8 days. So that need for timeliness to get after Hamas where they are right now versus the humanitarian imperative, it's an incredibly complex military challenge that the Israelis are embarking on.
But I go back to the fact that already we have almost 3,000 Palestinians who have lost their lives. And, you know, I mean, Hamas is a political organisation, a terrorist organisation, whatever you want to call it.
Or a terrorist organisation.
Yeah, but you cannot say that the people of Palestine must bear the punishment for what Hamas has done. And you will also be aware, because of our actions on the international stage, that sometimes things get worse rather than better when we try to go after those who have carried out attacks like Hamas did in a disproportionate way, and that civilians and innocents die. I mean, how concerned are you about this causing a bigger conflagration, a bigger conflict? We understand villages near the Lebanese border are being evacuated by Israel. You know, Lebanon could get drawn into this. God forbid Iran can get drawn into this. You know, there is another reason for issuing a call for restraint, isn't there? Because we don't want this becoming a bigger conflict.
Well, look, first and foremost, at no point have I said that Palestinian civilian population are the necessary price of this. It's incredibly regrettable that everything that has happened since last Saturday morning has happened. And as I've said on a number of occasions, I think Israel is doing all that it reasonably can to minimize the loss of innocent human life, whilst also prosecuting a very complex military mission in a necessarily timely way. Susanna, you're absolutely right to point to the wider geopolitical tension that exists in the region. That is why there is significant Western military resource led by the United States moving into the Eastern Mediterranean, not to play any direct part in whatever unfolds in Gaza, but to deter others in the region from seeing this as an opportunity to make an already bad situation worse.
You mentioned the United States. We know that last night the American president made it very clear that he would not tolerate an occupation of the Gaza Strip, that once Israel has done the job that they're setting out to do, they have to get out. Is that the position of the British government?
Well, look, the President of the United States made his comments last night. The Prime Minister is making a statement to Parliament. Those sorts of issues, what happens next, are probably not for me to comment on behalf of the government right now, live on air. We'll let the Prime Minister talk about that in Parliament later on.
Fair enough.
James Heappey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heappey.
The Armed Forces Minister.